Hey guys, it's Cash, and today we're going to be talking about Deadbeat. That is book 7 of the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This is the first book in the series I'll be doing a full review for on the channel. The first 6 books I read before starting the channel, but in my last video I do go over each of those first 6 books and give my rating on them and kind of give a brief review, a non-spoiler review on each of those first 6 books. So if you want to go check that out, I'll have a link in the description below. In this video, we're going to start with a non-spoiler review of Deadbeat, and then later on get into more of a spoiler discussion on certain parts I liked and didn't like about the book. So with that, let's just get into it. I will start by talking a little bit about the plot, and I have to say, Deadbeat probably has my favorite plot out of the Dresden books that I've read so far, except for maybe Death Masks, which is book 5 in the series. I say that because one thing I really enjoyed was this is the first time that we see past haunts and past enemies come back to get Harry. And, some of the decisions he made in the earlier books are coming back to haunt him, so to speak. Some elements from the previous books, they're brought up, and it's just handled really well. It doesn't feel forced. Butcher does a great job doing that, and it makes me excited for the rest of the series going forward. Um, the case in this book does take a bit of a backseat compared to some of the earlier ones, but in this case, compared to Blood Rights, I actually like this one a lot more. I think it's handled a lot better. I'm more okay with it because it still comes full circle around at the end of the day. The case does get solved, uh, but it is still more of a, oh, by the way, this is kind of happening, and it doesn't have the full focus of the book at all. And if you read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's handled really well. Uh, One thing I liked about Deadbeat is I kind of cleared up, not a plot hole, so to speak, but one thing I always thought was weird about the earlier books, especially Full Moon, um, that it seemed like no matter what happened to Harry in a physical sense, like no matter what injuries or what happened to this guy, no matter how much he was beaten up, he was always able kind of to bounce back in the next chapter. And I always was kind of scratching my head, like, hey, I know this guy is a wizard, but this is kind of unreal. How's he able to do all this? Well, that all ends in Deadbeat. He does have lingering injuries from previous books. Things happen to him that he doesn't bounce back from right away. And they even give a little insight in this one that kind of explains why Harry was able to heal so quickly from some of his injuries. And I think this is Butcher's way of kind of cleaning up some of those earlier books. Um, there is a big twist in this one, and I loved it. I thought it was handled perfectly. Sometimes books will try and throw in a major loop just to twist you up, and it doesn't work at all. I loved this one. I didn't see it coming at all. Completely threw me off. It was handled great. Overall, the plot does make me excited for the rest of the series going forward, like I said, and that's kind of what it's supposed to do. So good job there. All right, now we can talk about the characters a little bit. And since this is book 7 of a series, I'm more going to talk about what I liked about how Butcher handles the characters in this one rather than who is or isn't in the book. I say this because there are several side characters in the Dresden Files that come in and out of the story all the time. There are a few that go several books at a time before showing up again. So in the non-spoiler section of this video, I didn't want to say who is or isn't in it, so I'll keep that kind of vague. But of course, we can, as always, start with Harry. Of course, he's in it. And if you've seen my other videos, it is no secret that I'm a big fan of Harry Dresden. And in my opinion, his character development really does get better and better with each book. Of course, he's still smug and has jokes, but he's starting to feel more like a rounded out character rather than just, wizard who uses fire to fight bad guys and monsters. I would say from Grave Peril and on, we can see Harry's growth as a character and as a person. Um, you can start to see and kind of understand some of the decisions he makes and why he goes about certain things, while still wanting to really shake him for making some other decisions. Overall, he still continues to be one of my favorite characters I've discovered so far. Um, like I said earlier, I won't say who the returning side characters are in this book, but I will say that the ones that do spend time with Harry in this book get great development. New characters are introduced, and I can't be so sure because I haven't read on yet, but I'm assuming they're going to pop up again as well. Um, and I will say this is the really the first time in the series that we do get great development for Bob, Bob the Skull, Harry's little assistant, and really overall, again, you can really tell Butcher is improving as a writer the further along we get into this series. All right, and now we can move on over to talking about the setting. And I will say, ever since Summer Night, the setting has been handled pretty well, in my opinion. You can really get the vibe that Harry has lived in Chicago for several years at this point by his descriptions of certain areas around town, famous areas, Soldier Field and the like. And you can really tell he is a local. Um, the world building is nothing to write home about in this book, but there are some really key things introduced and key concepts brought up and mentioned that going forward I'm sure will be very important. Um, the description of Harry's apartment is always a good time, and you can really tell Harry has a weird sort of pride for his apartment, or really everything he owns or everything he considers his. He has a weird sort of pride in. Even when he talks bad about it, you can tell he likes what is his. Um, Other things talking about the setting, there are other locations that have popped up a few times in the book now, and in Deadbeat, I thought it did a good job of giving them some more life. One example would be Mac's Place, the tavern. I thought this was the first book that really kind of livened that spot up a bit more, in my opinion. All right, quickly, I'll just talk about the pacing here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think this is the longest Dresden Files book to this point, and for me, it still flew by. These books continue just to be super fast reads. I don't think it's taken me a full week to finish any of them after I start them, and that trend continues here in Deadbeat. Were a few moments in the book that at first glance, I thought, "Hey, why is this in here? This could probably be cut out." But looking back at it now that I'm done with it, everything was building to something better by the end of the day. So yeah, I loved it. It was all handled great. All right, there's no point in saying if I'm going to continue with the series because I am very obviously on for the ride at this point. Um, Deadbeat for me is right next to Death Masks. I'm giving it a nice 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5 stars for Deadbeat. Really excited to keep going with the next book in the series, Proven Guilty. I should be getting to that here in a few weeks. All right, that's it for the non-spoiler review. So now we are going to get into the spoiler discussion. So that is your warning. If you have not read Deadbeat, turn back now because this is gonna have spoilers going on for the rest of this video. I'm not going to break down each chapter or anything like that. More just going to talk about some of the bigger parts of the story, or at least what stood out to me the most. Um, so to start with, we can uh, begin with the brother dynamic between Harry and Thomas. It's amazing through the entire book. From the beginning, where Harry is just pissed off about the apartment being trashed. Mouse hasn't been taken at her fid, and neither has Mister. Everything's in disarray. Thomas has a revolving door of women coming in and out of the house, and it's just pissing Harry off. At the time, he doesn't understand Thomas at all, but later on, when they race at the beach, it really did a great job of developing Harry and Thomas's relationship, and it really made them feel like brothers, really feel like brothers for the first time to me. That scene was just awesome. Mouse is fantastic. He is the bestest boys of them all, and very clutch when you need him to be. I have a feeling he's going to be a favorite of mine for a long time. Murphy takes a back seat in this book, and I think it's really Butcher just made this decision to let other side characters get the shine like Butters. But what I don't like is the reason that she's out of this book is because she went to Hawaii with frickin' Kincaid. Um, I don't really like it, but it feels like a way to make Harry look at Murphy in a different way. I think we're slowly building to that relationship, and it's Butcher's way of saying like, "Hey man, the chick you really like is right in front of you, you big dummy." But even then, throughout this whole story, he still doubts it. Um, Harry's hand is still messed up from blood rights, from the fight scene with the fire when his left hand got singed. It is still very messed up, and Harry is so uncomfortable with it. He doesn't even use fire magic through this whole book until the very end. But he doesn't use the whole book, which is a bummer because who doesn't love some fuego? But I really enjoyed it because it made for the first time we kind of see that PTSD aspect messing with Harry. Like, oh wow, he actually does have some residual side effects here, and I thought it was really handled well. Right. Well, after Murphy runs off to Hawaii, Harry gets a message from Mavra. She's a high up on the Black Court of Vampires, and we were actually supposed to be made to believe that she died. I think in blood rights. But hell, even the characters in the story were suspicious of that one. She threatens Harry by blackmailing Murphy with some info from the last book that could ruin her career as a police officer. Um, and she tells Harry that she wants something called the Word of Kimmler, which turns out to be a book written by a very powerful necromancer a long time ago. Um, I said earlier we do get some great development on Bob, and well, we learn that he actually belonged to this Kimmler guy a long time ago, and when Harry makes him remember some of those details, it actually goes really bad, and it almost gets kind of dicey for Harry before he kind of makes him go back into the skull, into his little vessel there. Um, Moving on, Harry goes to the morgue to see if there's any unusual deaths recently and talk to Butters, who's the polka loving medical examiner, who isn't afraid to spot the unusual details. I can't remember what book he was introduced in, but it was one of the earlier ones. And as they're talking, they get attacked by some crazy dude named Gravane. I think that's how you say his name. And we learn that there are several big players in town, and they're actually all going after the word of Kimmler. Um, it's interesting because all of the baddies, all the bad guys introduced in this book are meant to come across as super powerful, and they do. Early on, they all look like such big problems. And then we learn that they're all actually apprentices of this Kimmler guy, and we're like, oh, it all makes sense. And then it kind of makes you think about how strong that guy had to be. And then you learn that it took the entire White Council to stop him, and you're like, oh, wow, things are getting kind of dicey out here. Um, Throughout the book, there are a few fights with each of these apprentices, each of these bad guys. They're all pretty entertaining. The first fight with Cowl, I really like because obviously we're in Harry's head, and you can really feel how powerful Cowl is, how powerful that opponent is compared to Harry at this time. One of the cooler connections to the previous books, in my opinion, comes in the reveal of who Liver Spots is and why he's working with Gravane. Turns out he's Snake Boy from Death Masks. I'm blanking on his actual name right now, so we're just going to keep calling him Snake Boy. He's mad because in Death Masks, Harry beats the hell out of him with a baseball bat, and now he wants revenge. It's this conflict with him that we kind of get the full circle moment with Butters, where he finds his courage to go get Mouse and come back and save Harry. If it really wasn't for him, Harry probably would have got killed. Also, seeing how well Mouse listens to Harry, it's just sick. As a dog owner myself, he listens to Harry's order to just kill Snake Boy with no hesitation. Give this dog a treat. That's just awesome. During Harry's investigating, he goes to a local bookstore to try and find the same book that Gravane was using when he attacked him and Butters at the morgue. Um, so he goes to a bookstore that typically it's known in the arcane world in the local circles to sell books of that sort. He goes there looking for the book, and there we meet Sheila, good old Sheila. She is this book's hot chick that Harry meets, but this one is not what it seems. I said earlier I didn't see the twist coming in this one, and man, it was fantastic. We go the entire book hoping that this relationship works out with Harry, hopes it takes off, that things can finally move steady for him. Especially with Murphy off in Hawaii, and while the relationship between the two of them, between Harry and Sheila, progresses very quickly. We learn why, towards the end of this book, it was Lassiel the entire time. The demon connected to the coin of the fallen from Death Masks. That's insane. I did not see that coming. It's these connections between books that has me enjoying the series so much. We learn that Lassiel can make Harry see and feel whatever she wants, and it really overwhelms him, actually. It's when he gets hit by Snake Boy's death curse. He has a meeting with Lassiel and his his alter ego, his conscience or whatever in his inside his head. It's this meeting of the minds that leads Harry to agree to get Lassiel's help, use her knowledge, use her power, and I mean that's just a slippery slope for Harry, if you ask me. That's gonna I definitely come to bite him in the ass later on, but can't wait to see it. We meet some more wardens in this book, and Harry actually becomes a pretty important warden himself by the end of it, which I thought was pretty cool. Uh, we do learn that not all wardens in this world are like Morgan and, well, jackasses, but they're more friendly and likable, actually. We also learn just how bad the war is going for the White Council with the vampires. The vampires have apparently turned the tide and wiped out more than half of the wardens in the world in like a just one fell swoop, along with several other wizards. To flee, the White Council fled through the Never Never, and the vamps followed them, which they say is probably going to cause drama with the fairies. So the beef just keeps on rolling. Things just keep getting bigger and bigger. Um, They say the vampires also made some sort of deal with demons that they call outsiders. Um, haven't met any of them yet, but they sound like huge problems. Um, the entire final sequence in this book was just badass. I know I'm leaving things out in the story, but these are, just the biggest moments that stood out to me. The parts that made the book so enjoyable. Um, you know, and how could I be remiss to not say this? The entire book, we get foreshadowing about Sue, the T Rex, at the one of the Chicago museums there, and we finally get to see what all the foreshadowing was the entire book, and why she was being talked about so much. Uh, Harry actually uses some necromancy himself to bring the T Rex back to life, and nothing's more freaking cool and badass than riding in on a damn T Rex that you brought back from the dead to go fight some evil wizards. Uh, One knock I do have for the book is, like I said, the entire time these new villains are made out to be super strong, super unstoppable, and by the end, Harry and Ramirez, that's another warden, kind of just kick their ass out of nowhere. Gravane gets bodied, Corpse Taker and her lackey, I'm blanking on his name, they didn't even make it to the final fight, I'm pretty sure. They just get waxed real early on out of nowhere. Granted, Corpse Taker was killed by the commander of the Wardens, Lucio, and that whole thing, by the way, when she took, the Captain Ginyu moment where Corpse Taker took over Lucio's body, and then Morgan isn't listening to Harry because he saw Harry kill the body that was the commander. That whole thing, I just thought that was pretty stupid. Like, come on, Morgan, think for once in your life, you clown. Like, come on, come on. You just wanted to shake him. Like, that just felt a little silly. Um, Cowl is still made out to be super powerful. He is the one bad guy that doesn't get nerfed at the end of the book. And it's really kind of set up like, how are they going to stop this guy? His lackey, Kamori, I think her name is. They're just super powerful at this point by the end. But, kind of how they stop it, it all made sense. There was no Deus Ex Machina like some of the earlier books. Bob comes back. He takes over the freaking T Rex. It was all just sick. They were able to nullify the spell Cal was working on that was going to blow up Chicago, bring all the dead back, all that shit. The spell bounces back in Cal's face, blows him to hell. At least we think. We don't see his body, so no body, no death. He's probably going to pop up in the next damn book. Watch. But things end with Harry kind of closing this case using closing the case, gives the word of Kimmler to Mavra, gets Murphy off the hook, and like I said, the development in this story is really great because at the beginning, when Harry meets up with Mavra, he's like shaking in his boots, and then because of all the things that happen in this story, when he goes at the end, he kind of just tells her to eat shit and to not mess with him anymore, and I loved it. Um, and oh yeah, right before the credits roll, Harry uses fire magic for the first time the entire book to light up his candles, leaving us to believe that okay, maybe he's getting through his PTSD from blood rights, and things are going to start working out in his head. All in all, after talking everything out loud, I do still think this book comes right behind Death Masks for me. So it's going to be my second favorite so far. Again, I know I missed some things in the story. Didn't want to go play by play, but those were my favorite moments, or at least the ones that stood out to me the most. Like I said, I'll be starting up Proven Guilty in a few weeks. You want to see the journey, my journey through the Dresden Files, along with other great stories, hit that subscribe button. If you want to support this video, drop a like. Talk to you guys later. See ya.